Hello, lovely friends. I hope this video finds you well. I'll be keeping it a bit brief today as I do a quick recap of books 1 to 2 from Fyodor Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov. I've brought out my copy of the book, which has gone through an existential crisis, as I previously mentioned in the introductory video that I had wrapped up, I believe 2 weeks ago. Books 1 through 2 take their sweet time with the plot. The characters, on the other hand, from the onset are bursting with personality. We have in these pages an interesting dualism going on with the narration. It's part expository and part dramatic. For instance, letting the characters exchange dialogue without necessarily interjecting as a narrator. We are confronted with the question, is the narrator Dostoevsky? Is it a fictional author? We don't quite know. As always, that's what makes it a bit more engaging for the reader. There were a couple of character-related parallels that I found in these pages. One, for instance, I don't know if anyone else drew this parallel, but one can find a parallel between Prince Mishkin, who is the main character in Dostoevsky's other novel titled The Idiot, and Alyosha here in the Brothers Karamazov. It's been hard for me in these chapters to build affinity towards Alyosha. He seems, at least at this point, to be a string that ties loose ends between the other characters. There is a quote, however, regarding eccentricity that helped make me see him in a more interesting light. It reads, "Not only is an eccentric not always a particularity and a separate element, but on the contrary, it happens sometimes that such a person carries within himself the heart of the whole, and the rest of the men of his epoch have for some reason been temporarily torn from it, as if by a gust of wind." I thought that was a beautiful passage. Joseph Frank, an American literary scholar and someone who specialized in Dostoevsky, wrote how all the major characters in his mind are, quote, confronted with the necessity to make a leap of faith in something or someone beyond themselves, to transcend the bounds of personal egoism in an act of spiritual self-surrender. For Ivan, according to Joseph Frank, it's his anguish at the suffering of humankind. This is despite rationality set against religion and its call to blindly surrender to faith. For Zima, it's his sincerity. Perhaps already having reached this passage, if you might recall, he is the first one to kiss Father Zosima's hand despite his inner rage, and this is in stark contrast to Ivan, who kisses the hand only when in receipt of a kernel of wisdom. There are many significant passages past books 1 and 2 that deal with religion and rationality. Here in these books already, there was a broader point brewing. More specifically, that's a parallel that one can draw between atheism and religious faith. We're already in these two books invited into a world that deals with a spectrum of moral ideas floating around. It's an ode to Dostoevsky's masterful way of providing us with a looking glass into each individual's relationship with religion. We have Alyosha, the believer. We have Ivan, the humanist, inspired by religious ideas. We also have Rakitin, who is a materialist, easily exchanging those very ideals in his soul for earthly success, or what he hopes and deems would be his earthly success. Very exciting character development going on in these two books already, and I wanted to close off these notes that I had taken with a couple of quotes that I found very, very mesmerizing to explore. One is a very nifty observation from the narrator at the end of book 1, and it reads, "In the majority of instances, human beings, even the evildoers among them, are far more naive and straightforward than we suppose, and that includes ourselves." Throughout the book, the narrator's playful tone is always shining through. We then have in book 2 an interesting and fun observation from the elder. He recalls a certain medical man, he says, who once spoke with humor and a rueful kind of humor. "I love mankind," he said, "but I marvel at myself. The more I love mankind in general, the less I love human beings in particular, separately, that is, as individual persons. In my dreams," he said, "I would often arrive at fervent plans of devotion to mankind and might very possibly have gone to the cross for human beings, had that been suddenly required of me. And yet I am unable to spend 2 days in the same room with someone else, and this I know from experience. A little further down, he adds, to compensate for this, however, it has always happened that the more I have hated human beings in particular, the more ardent has become my love for mankind in general. Some more wisdom on the following page. Also shun fear. Although fear is only the consequence of any kind of lying, never be daunted by your own lack of courage in the attainment of love, nor be overdaunted even by your bad actions in this regard. We then get a wonderful description of what Dostoevsky envisioned would be the difference between active love and fanciful love, is what he termed the opposite. He writes, fanciful love thirsts for a quick deed, swiftly accomplished, and that everyone should gaze upon it. In comparison to fanciful love, active love is a cruel and frightening thing. Fanciful love thirsts for a quick deed, swiftly accomplished, and that everyone should gaze upon it. In such cases, the point really is reached where people are even willing to give their lives just as long as the whole thing does not last an eternity, but is swiftly achieved, as on the stage, and as long as everyone is watching and praising. Active love, on the other hand, involves work and self-mastery, and for some it may even become a whole science. But I prophesy to you that at the very moment you behold with horror that in spite of all your efforts, not only have you failed to move towards your goal, but even seem to have grown more remote from it, at that very moment, I prophesy to you, you will suddenly reach that goal and discern clearly above you the miracle-working power of the Lord, who has loved you all along and has all along been mysteriously guiding you. A nice one on Ivan, and this is, I believe, provided by his younger brother, Alyosha, in conversation with Dima. Alyosha notes, you dislike Ivan. Ivan would not be tempted by money. And we have Dima responding, oh, wouldn't he indeed? And how about the beauty of Katerina Ivanovna? It's not money alone that's involved here, though 60,000 is an enticing sum. Alyosha then replies, Ivan's sights are set higher than that. Ivan would not be tempted even by thousands. Ivan isn't in quest of money or peace of mind. He may possibly be in quest of torment. And a bit further down, his soul is a wild and stormy one. His mind is in captivity. Inside him, there is a great unresolved idea. He's the sort of man who needs not millions, but the resolution of his idea. This was a great parallel to the main character in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, for those who have read it. If you have not read Crime and Punishment, my goodness, please make it a priority. It is one of my very favorite books, and hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to review that as well. With regard to books 1 and 2 of the many more to come in Fyodor Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, that's a wrap. More to come, more to come. In the meantime, please remember my ears are open and attentive if you'd ever want to chat about Russian lit. Hope you found this short video useful. If you have any questions or want to see something specific in an upcoming video, please let me know and I'd be happy to orient my review accordingly. But until then,